Good day, my friends. I hope everyone is doing fantastic. Today on the podcast, we are diving into something that I'm really excited about because this is a conversation I've had with a lot of people. And what we're going to be going through is what is like the scientific approach to fitness, and specifically fitness for longevity. So how do we actually structure our fitness routine around the fact that we want to not only get better and perform better and function better today, but we're actually functioning better in the future. And we're setting this up where I'm getting healthier and healthier throughout time as I go through this routine. I see so many people who come in my office and their fitness routine is actually degrading the health of their body. And so when we look at that, we can get really specific about how we are going to train so that we get healthier on all of the metrics that we need so that we can heal through time and we can continue to improve our health on all the metrics that really matter. So what we're going to do on today's show is go through what are the main categories that we need to be training over a week period and how to train each of those categories. We're also going to go through some tips of how to implement those on a weekly basis and what does that actually look like as we go through time in the gym, and how do we recover from these things? What are some little tips and tricks that we can actually use to make it a little bit easier and a little bit better? So without further ado, let's dive into fitness for longevity. So when we look at this, there's a few main categories that I'm always working with patients on. So the very first category, I think, is cardio. And the way we explain cardio is in the pyramid basis. So we're identifying the base level of fitness that we have, and we explain this like to have a very high pyramid, you have to have a very wide base. So when we're starting to train cardio, we want to train, lots of volume, high base. We want to train kind of the low and slow version of cardio. This is your zone 2 cardio fitness. And a lot of times when we start looking at this stuff, you're doing conversational level training for a long period of times. 30 minutes or more would be this kind of, building the base of my pyramid. And so, when we look at this stuff, we want to start to identify what are my current levels, and then how does that inform what I need to do going forward? So, when you're looking at just cardiovascular fitness, if we improve from the lowest level, let's say that we don't have any cardiovascular endurance at all, we're very, very low level, and we improve to above average. This is a feasible thing, as we'll go through one of my patients' experiences on this. Just going from the lowest level to not elite, not amazing, just above average, we will reduce our risk for all causes of mortality by 60 to 70%. That is a massive change in the risk of any cause of mortality. Any cause of death for my age group will reduce by 60 to 70% if I improve my cardio endurance from the lowest to above average. And when you look at getting fit from a cardio standpoint, there used to be like, oh, if you were doing a lot, it could be bad, blah, blah, blah. Those are all short-term effects. The overall long-term effect is always positive for improving fitness. There was a study, Mansager, MD, on 122,000 patients, and they found those with the lowest risk for all causes of death had the highest level of cardio fitness. So when we look at that, and we'll put the VO2 max chart in the show notes at derrickhines.com, you can see that the higher my cardio fitness gets, the lower my risk for any health problems continues to go. So it's really important that this become a part of our weekly routine. And most of the low and slow says that we need about 90 minutes a week of that zone 2 type of training. You can split that up, and we'll go through some example schedules of a week towards the end of this, of like, how do we actually put all this into practice? So we could do 3 30-minute cardio routines we could do one 90-minute cardio routine. I kind of like one big block because it challenges us a little bit more and gives us a little bit different muscle, so to speak. As we continue to climb the pyramid, though, we start to get to where we are doing much less time at a higher intensity. At the very peak of the pyramid, what you would be looking at is your VO2 max, the highest level of being able to take in oxygen and use it for activity, use it to run, any of that type of stuff. So we want to train the base of the pyramid and make that a really, really wide base. And as we go up the pyramid, we want to start to test, how high can I climb? How high can I get the peak of my pyramid? And that kind of gets us into a little bit different categories. So one of my patients came in, we'll call her Janice for the sake of this. When we started working with her, she was 58. And the first thing we did was, hey, let's find out where you're at. So we had her go and do a VO2 max test. And she came back at a 26 milliliter per kilogram per minute, basically, is how those are measured, which was on the low end. It was quite low for her age group, from the 50 to 59 category. So the first thing we said was, you've got to start to train that. We need fitness, we need strength, we need to do all this stuff. But even as we build those things, the cardio part of this is your lowest hanging fruit, so it needs to be a priority. So we started having her do treadmill walks, because she had access to it, for 30 minutes, 3 times a week. And she initially could not complete 30 minutes on the treadmill. So the initial thing is, hey, look, we have to accumulate 90 minutes a week. If you can't do 30 minutes straight, do what you can, and then add in more and more as you go along. So over probably a 3-month period, she got to where she was doing 30 minutes straight. And then the goal was, now I want you to do 30 minutes at a little bit of an incline on the treadmill. And so initially she couldn't do that. And so we built up to 30 minutes at an incline. I think she was doing initially 1%, 2%, 3% incline. And every time her perceived exertion hit 50%, I'm about halfway of what I could do, that was when we increased it. There came a time where she was doing 30 minutes. This was about 6 months in. She was doing 30 minutes at a 4% incline. And she said, hey, my perceived exertion is at 50%. And so we started to say, well, I don't really want you going higher for risk of injury, and I don't necessarily want you going longer. So let's just start working on changing speed. As long as we're in low and slow, the conversational speed, then the only other thing we can do is let's start adding some weight. So she started doing, initially, we got her a weight vest that you could do 5-pound increments. So she put a 5-pound weight vest on. She's at 4%, and she's doing 90 minutes a week, 3 30-minute ones with a 5-pound weight vest. She went with that for probably 6 weeks and said, hey, my perceived exertion's at 50% again. Let's add 5 more pounds. And so what we were always doing is we're working in these constraints of, can we continue to kind of challenge that energy system, that zone 2 low and slow energy system, and continue to push it higher and higher. So after about probably 8 months of this, we retested her because she was exponentially further than she was initially, not being able to walk for 30 minutes straight. To the end of this, she's walking not only 30 minutes 3 times a week, but she's doing it at an incline at a faster speed with weight on her. And so we wanted to see. Janice increased her VO2 max to 33 milliliters per kilogram per minute, or putting her in the above average category. And she had put in a lot of work at this point. We also checked some metrics. Her blood pressure had dropped to, by about 10 points to within normal limits. She lost 14 pounds during those eight months, and her resting heart rate, something that I use as just a rough metric for cardiovascular fitness, dropped from 78 to about 65. So, to within a really nice range. So at this point, we were continuing to talk about the pyramid model, and Janice said, well, I feel like I'm in the middle of my pyramid. And so that led us to that next stage of the pyramid, which is VO2 max training. That is the zone 5 intense, highest, as fast as I can go type of training. And so when we look at it, there's a few ways that we can train that. This is your anaerobic, as hard as I can go. Can I get the highest amount? If we're trying to train VO2 max, there's a few ways of doing it, but all of it is high intensity stuff. VO2 max is a little bit strange because it's the maximum amount of oxygen that we can take in and utilize and put to work while we're being active. And when we test that, it seems a bit strange that we would do that at a very high intensity, but a lot of people have heard of Tabata, and Tabata actually kind of set the standard of, we can use these high intense activities, and if your body can figure out how to operate at a high intensity, then it'll figure out how to use more oxygen at a slightly lower intensity, thereby increasing our VO2 max. And so we teach people something called the 10-minute VO2 max threshold. And when we get to this, as we got to this point, we've built the base with Janice, right? The base of the pyramid is bigger. Now we want to layer that on. This is not something I want people to start with until they've built the base of that pyramid up, because you're not going to have a wide enough base to do this without having some issues. So this was the perfect time to put it into her routine. So what we do is this 10-minute VO2 max threshold. And what it looks like is using a bike, using a rowing machine or a stepper machine. Those are my favorites. I don't really like doing this in running. The risk of injury is too high for most of us because you are trying to do a maximum effort. And so my go-to is using an Airdyne bike. And what you do is you're doing 5 2-minute rounds. The first 2-minute round is going to be 90 seconds at 50% or a 5 on your perceived exertion, about half of what you think you could do. And then you get 30 seconds as a rest break. So that's a 2-minute cycle. And then the next round, after the 30-second rest, you're back on for 60 seconds at 75% of your perceived exertion. And then you get another 60-second break. So you have another 2-minute cycle. And then now is where the fun gets started. So starting after that 60-second rest, you're going to do 30 seconds at 90% of your max, 90 to 100% of your perceived exertion for 30 seconds. So you're pedaling all out as hard as you can go, 30 seconds, watching the clock, and then you get 90 seconds break. And you're going to repeat that 3 times to end this 10-minute VO2 max threshold. So you'll do 90 seconds rest, and then you're back on the clock for 30 seconds at 90% of your perceived exertion as hard as you can. You're pedaling, you're rowing, you're stepping, whichever machine you're on. 30 seconds as hard as you can go, and then you get 90 seconds rest. And then for the last round, 30 seconds on, hard as you can, and then technically 90 seconds of a rest break, and you're done. So I do like to continue moving on those rest breaks. So if I'm on an Airdyne, I'm on a bike, I'm going to continue kind of pedaling and just barely moving. You're going to notice when you get off, your legs are wobbly. It's only 10 minutes, and I promise you it will give you everything that you want. So using that, what we actually will start to see is that all the metrics, like in Janice's case, all the metrics that we track get much, much better. At the end of this, her resting heart rate hovered around 60. So she went from a resting heart rate over about a year to 14 months, went from almost 80 at rest. Her heart was having to beat almost 80 times to give her body the energy that it needed, to right around 60. That's an incredible sign of just how much better and efficient your heart is functioning, and your cardio fitness is just climbed to a much higher degree. At that point, she improved her VO2 max again. She went up to about a 36 milliliter per kilogram per minute. At this point, she was getting close to 60, so she wanted to cheat and say, hey, let me get into my 60 to 69. Either way, if you look at the chart, she was doing fantastic in terms of where she was. So, you know, in this category, she was very close to being elite, but she was definitely in the high category for both age groups. And, you know, really, if we looked at where she went from a starting point of her VO2 max being 26 and improving that to a 36, her risk of mortality just decreased dramatically. So this work was time very, very well spent and will serve her for the rest of her life going forward as she continues to maintain all of these changes. But, you know, much easier to maintain them than it is to kind of build this up. So once we got to that point, you know, we were both saying, hey, look, we want to continue. She's a bit addicted to it, to kind of checking and tracking. But we want to start layering in the other areas that are very, very important. When we look at the research around improving VO2 max, there's very similar research to improving overall body strength. There was a study done in 2017 by Lee et al. That found low muscle mass had a 60% increased risk of death versus high muscle mass. And in the follow-up study in 2018, the same researchers found that you could actually get more specific and say there was low muscle strength that had the greatest risk factor for all causes of mortality. And in following that up, if we look at the risk ratios of having very, very low muscle strength, there is a 2.34 risk ratio. That means 234% increased risk of all causes of death for having low muscle mass. To put that in perspective, smoking has a 1.4 to 2.0, depending on the studies. So 140 to 200% increased risk of all causes of mortality from smoking. So having very low muscle strength and muscle mass is a bigger risk factor than smoking is, which is quite astounding. And I don't think many people look at how much weight, pun intended, having low muscle mass carries. So we really need to be paying attention to how much muscle strength we have and how much we're spending time on it. There's a few different types of muscle strength that we go through with our patients. And I teach something called the 3x3 concept. The 3x3 concept is I want muscle strength and I want muscle stability. These two can be slightly different. So before all of our strength days, we want to do 3 stability exercises for that area. So if it's a leg day, I want to do 3 stability exercises for my legs before I get started. And then when I get into the strength component, I like people to focus on 3, to make the numbers easy, strength categories or strength moves for the legs. So that might be things like squats. That might be things like lunges, ham curls, leg extensions. We're picking 3 exercises that we're going to really focus on to get stronger at over time. The other concept that there's a lot of back and forth on in the fitness community when it comes to strength is, are we doing high repetitions or low repetitions? There's benefits to both. You have muscular endurance. Can I stay strong the more repetitions I do? And then we have muscle power. Can I stay strong for a very short duration and high power output, a lot of strength output? There's benefits to both sides of these. So what we do is we do a low month and a high month, and we just continue to alternate them. So my strength days may stay the same every week, and we'll get into some of that stuff. But on my low month, I'm going to be doing low repetitions for just a few of those exercises. So we're talking below 8 repetitions for my strength exercises. If I'm doing squat, I might be doing sets of 5. And doing 5 sets of 5 for squats might be a typical workout for that. On my high month, I'm going to flip that, and I might be doing sets of 20 to 30 at a much lower weight. So on the low repetition months, I'm doing heavier. I'm doing less repetitions. I'm focusing on a perfect muscle contraction. In my head, I'm visualizing that muscle contracting as strong as I can make it. And that's the focus of everything that I'm trying to do on these heavier months, is perfect contractions. That's what I want. When I flip that and I'm on a light, high repetition month, I'm going to go much lighter because I'm doing a lot more repetitions, sometimes 5 times more repetitions, especially if I'm looking at these. And in these situations, I'm focused on perfect form for every repetition, so that I am paying attention to how is the move being done. It's just a slightly different focus, but it gives benefits, and I'm tracking a lot of different things: high month, low month, high month, low month. And it gives us a really good way of checking all of those boxes. So if we go through that, there's a few things that we want to do. We want to make sure we're progressing in all of these. So on my heavier month, I do want to be getting stronger heavy month to heavy month. So if I start in January as a heavy month, I'm tracking my squat strength. Then I want to end that month being able to do more weight than I started the month. And then I want to continue to push that up just a little bit in different categories as we go along. On my lighter month, I want to still either be going up in repetitions, or I want to be going up in weight for the same number of repetitions. So I'm still progressing. With strength, it's all about challenging the body and giving the body the chance to recover and increase the strength and the ability for us to do the workload in the same number of repetitions as we go along. So we just don't want to be static on either end of the strength days. Some things that we can do when we're looking at strength to improve it. There's a lot of in the recovery world that you can do, and we'll have a specific podcast focused just on that. But a lot of people start asking me, what are the performance enhancers that we can use for strength days? And we'll get to recovery in a little bit. But my favorite thing that I tell everyone, if you're doing strength stuff, you should be doing 2 things. You should be checking your protein intake, and you should probably add creatine monohydrate to your supplement routine. Protein, if we're building strength and we're not eating enough protein, then the chance that we're actually laying down more muscle mass as we age is very, very low. We should, a basic level is we should roughly shoot for about 1.5 to 1.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. And so to make that easier for people in pounds, if you're a 200-pound male, you should be looking at somewhere around 150 to 180 grams of protein a day. And the requirement increases as we age. So I know we've talked a lot about fasting on this podcast, and we've talked about the benefits of intermittent fasting and paying attention to what we eat. This still falls in that category. And I think the one caveat I have with intermittent fasting as people age is that we still need to be tracking our protein intake and getting enough protein to build muscle. And anytime I have older patients above 60 coming in and they're saying, hey, I'm having trouble putting on muscle mass, we go through everything we just talked about. We're going through the strength training routine, a low month, high month, and protein intake. And when they start to add that in there, there's some other things that we can tweak, add in creatine. Every single time we start to see improvements when we get the protein intake corrected. So it's a really important one. And I think in today's world, we've kind of shifted almost too far where a lot of people are under eating protein and they're having trouble keeping that muscle mass. And going back to those studies, low muscle mass and low muscle strength have a massive influence on your ability to age and fight off any causes of mortality. So very, very important that we get this right. I'm going to go to stability because stability and strength on our weekly training are tied together very well. So there's 2 versions of stability. There is segmental stability, which would be like, can I stabilize my shoulder specifically? or my hips, specifically my ankle? Are the individual segments staying stable as I do work or move weights throughout the kind of movement? And then there's global stability, which would be, can I stabilize my body? Do I have good balance as I'm moving, as I'm walking, as I'm stepping over things? That becomes more and more important as we go through the aging process. Having good balance, and patients who are listening to this have heard me say it a million times, can be a superpower as we go through the aging process. Because if you have really good balance, we can keep our body stable and have less risk of an injury or a fall with a little bit less strength. And we know that we're going to lose strength. We can do all this stuff to fight it, but strength will go down with time. So we really need to make sure that we're creating good global stability. So what this would look like in local stability is starting to do some single leg or single arm movements in our routine. And this challenges a lot. The nice thing about this is, like, if I do a single leg squat and I'm doing good range of motion, this challenges all of the segments along that. So I'm really challenging ankle stability. I'm challenging knee stability, and I'm challenging hip stability and back stability, all doing a single leg squat. If I do a single leg deadlift where I'm on, and we'll put kind of links to all this stuff, but if I'm doing a single leg deadlift, same thing. I'm really challenging my hip. I'm challenging my lower back. We start to add in what we call a single leg deadlift with a twist. So at the bottom, we'll actually rotate our body up and really increase the stability requirements that your hip has to provide to keep you in that position. Single leg hip abduction. I'm challenging the stability on both sides whenever I'm going through there, the movements. If we start looking at doing segmental stability on all fours, where I'm on my hands and my knees, I can start doing some kickbacks in that position. I'm staying in all four and I'm doing like a donkey kick. And that's challenging the segmental stability of my core. That's challenging the segmental stability of the hip that I'm kneeling on. It's challenging the segmental stability of both my arms and shoulders and wrists. So when we add in these stability days, these segmental stability days, you're improving the segments all through the chain, and we're allowing our body to utilize the strength that we're building. So it's really, really a great thing to add in. I've had patients fight me on this, and they start to realize when I add in that stuff, my body feels better. It feels healthier. That's one of the things we see when people are doing a fitness routine just focused on getting stronger, is that I'm getting stronger on an unstable base sometimes, and I'm adding fuel to the fire. I'm increasing my risk for injury as I go along. And at some point, that all comes crashing down, and I no longer can exercise because I have an injury and I lose all the progress. So if you have dealt with injuries as you've been working out, the chances are you are not adding in those segmental stability days into your routine. Some examples of some single arm stability might be something like a Turkish get up using a kettlebell. I love kettlebell swings, single arm kettlebell swings. Single arm dumbbell snatches, work on all fours, as we talked about, doing the all four bird dog, all four balance, doing a high plank, very, very helpful for shoulder stability. Things like bear crawls can be very, very helpful. Doing single arm rotations, doing the kind of yoga moves where I'm doing single arm stability as I add in the upper arm rotations, doing tripods, all of these things that put my shoulder complex in a stable position and challenge it are really, really helpful to utilize the strength that I'm building in my core, the strength that I'm building in my arm, in my shoulder, in my bicep, tricep, in my wrist, all of these things. So when we look at segmental stability, we're going to start our strength workout with some of those moves, and then we're going to lead into the strength moves as we've challenged the stability. So we're going to do stability first, strength second in a strength workout. And I'll come back to that here in a little bit whenever we get into a sample weekly routine. Global stability is just balancing my whole body. And there's a lot that we can do for this. And the nice thing about working this into our routine is that it fires all those little small muscles that we might not be training, picking our big 3 strength-focused moves. So I love things like yoga for global stability because it challenges our body to stay stable through space. Tai Chi is something that has been shown to really improve balance and reduce risk of falls. So it's slow, controlled movements while we balance the body. And single leg exercises, as we're talking about, single leg balance exercises. So if I'm doing arm workouts while I'm standing just on one leg, those types of things that we can add in can really become very, very helpful, of like layering in balance into a lot of the exercises that we're already doing are really, really valuable whenever we look at adding this global stability. And then adding in straight balance training. Am I doing things where I am challenging my balance, eyes open, eyes closed, on a stable surface or on an unstable surface? If I start adding that in, even intermittently throughout the week, our body wants to be in balance. And so it really will increase my ability to feel very stable. And when we get older patients to go through these things, they start to say, I'm just so much more confident in my moves, in my ability to go out and go travel and go do some things. So having good global stability, balance, can really be a superpower as we go through this. If we continue going kind of down the checklist, the other part, so we've gone through our cardio pyramid. So we start with the low and slow zone 2. As we continue to build, we get to that VO2 max style training. We've started to look at, can I build the strength that I need to keep my body healthy and the stability to prevent injuries and make sure that I'm able to move my body the way that I want. The other thing that we need to look at that a lot of people will miss is mobility. Mobility is something that allows our body to move correctly through space. This helps prevent pain. This helps decrease our risk for injury and actually allows us to improve performance on a lot of different levels. And mobility is the one thing I think that we're going to do every single day. So what we want to do is hit our major problem areas throughout a week's time span. So every week we should have something that we do for each major category, even if it's just one time that week. At least we're getting through it every week. And over time, that's going to start to accumulate and we're going to really start to get better mobility and we're going to decrease our risk for an injury. So if we look at this, the major areas of the body that cause problems are going to be the chest. A lot of people tighten up throughout the chest. This is today's world. We're sitting, we're on computers, we're in cars. The chest really can start to pull us forward. It puts a lot of stress on the shoulders. It restricts a lot of motion that can end up causing shoulder problems and injuries and rotator cuff tears. It puts a lot of stress on the neck and causes a lot of the compression throughout the joints in the neck and can really start to create some issues if we leave it. So we really want chest to be on that list. The hip flexors act the exact same way that the chest do, just in the lower back. So they're pulling on the front of those segments in the lower back. If we allow the hip flexors to tighten over time from sitting, we can really start to increase our risk for problems throughout the hips and the lower back. A couple other major problem areas we want to make sure we hit are the quads, the front of the leg, the hamstrings, the back of the leg, the calves, and the mid-back and the outside of our hips. If we hit the chest, the hip flexors, the quads, hamstrings, calves, the outside of the hip, and our mid-back, we've checked all of the major areas that can lead to problems over time. And we just do basically a few minutes every day. Go through what you can. Monday, we might be stretching the chest out and rolling that out. Tuesday, we might do hip flexors. The next morning, we might do kind of quads and hamstrings. Then we'll do calves. Then we'll get down and work and roll out the outside of our hip. We'll do a piriformis stretch, spend some time loosening that up. The next day we might do all mid-back rotation, do foam roller for the mid-back, do tune-up throughout the mid-back, tune-up ball. And we've checked all the boxes, but the idea is that we spend a little bit of time every day doing something for mobility. We do this in a few ways. So there's a lot of research questions on how long should I hold a stretch? Should I hold it for 30 seconds? Should I hold it for 2 minutes? Should I go in and out of it in a dynamic stretch? Should I get down and use a foam roller and actually release it? When you really start to dig in the research, and there's going to be a bunch of doctors who have different opinions based on what they've seen with this, the bottom line is the research says if you accumulate time working on flexibility, that you will improve the muscle's ability to stretch, and you will decrease the stiffness inside that muscle to a point where you have healthier, better moving muscles. So don't be cute with this. Spend a little bit of time every day. If it feels good to hold 30 to 60 seconds, do that. If you're bored with that, grab a foam roller or grab a tune-up ball, which is kind of something that we use. You can Google tune-up ball. It's like a firm, yet it's soft enough that it doesn't hurt. And roll that muscle out to find the spots that are really tight and knotted up, and do some deep breathing to tap into your nervous system and allow that to loosen up and relax those knots in there. So you're improving the mobility and the flexibility of the tissue by spending a little bit of time every day. This is extremely valuable. Again, don't be cute. Spend the time doing it every day. Spend 5 to 10 minutes, and I promise you will start to feel that you are getting better motion. I'll add this layer in, and why we need to make sure we're doing the commitment to doing it daily. There's quite a bit of research and anecdotal evidence that for every year that something has been tight, it takes somewhere around 20 to 25 hours of consistent stretching to get that muscle back to normal flexibility. That seems very arbitrary to me, but I've heard multiple doctors and military physicians mention that number based on what they've seen as they're working through time with some of their patients. And I've noticed in myself and in some of my patients, when we look back on the accumulated time for somebody to start really noticing a big change, it ends up being right around that 20 to 25 hour of accumulated time. So, if we're doing 10 minutes every day, we're getting an hour a week of mobility. So within 25 weeks, we've hit that 25-hour mark, and you're going to really see a lot of improvements in mobility and flexibility. So if we check all of these boxes, we have set up this beautiful routine of improving my cardio pyramid, of improving my overall strength, improving my segmental and global stability, and improving the mobility of my entire body. So I'm going through all of the major problem areas and any areas that I have some tightness or issues with, and I'm spending some time every day just working through the whole body. So over a week, I've gotten every major thing moving better, and I start that back over. As we go through time, this type of program will change how you age and how you function with an incredible degree of effectiveness. And it minimizes the need to start looking for external sources, because I've checked all these boxes in a way that allows me to continue to make improvements and not get injured and not have these problems that derail me. So when we look at putting this into practice, the big thing is, can I allocate the time to make sure that we're doing all of this stuff? So I'm going to give you all an example week of what this would all look like. So if we'll start on Sunday. I like Sunday to be an active day, because it starts the week off right, and we have some time to kind of get all of our schedule and structure done well. So I like to set Sunday as a 90-minute low and slow, the base of that cardio pyramid training. So that can be walking, that can be jogging, that can be biking, that can be rucking. As we were talking about, rucksack is where we're adding the weighted vests, and we're kind of going hiking with them. But that's 90 minutes in that zone 2 conversational level of activity. And it can really, really be a great time for us to put a podcast on, to put on an audiobook, to get out in nature and get some fresh air. But I love to put all that in. You can break that up into 3 30-minute ones if we haven't built the base of that pyramid up, as we were talking about with Janice's case. But in this instance, we'll look at doing 90 minutes on a Sunday as our zone 2 base of the pyramid training. When we get to Monday, I like to hit the ground running with Mondays and do strength leg day on a Monday. I'm really getting into the routine. It's very important for me to have leg strength. If we look at the low-hanging fruit of keeping us mobile and keeping us active, leg strength to me is higher on the priority list than arm strength. I want to make sure I'm hitting that every week. And so on leg day, I'm going to do that 3x3 program where I'm going to start my leg day with 3 stability exercises for my legs, my hips. So I might start that with some single leg squats, some single leg deadlift, and some lunges. And then I'm going to get into my strength, my 3 strength moves. So I might get that into some squats, some, leg extensions, some leg curls, and I'm tracking strength with those. I'm doing low repetitions and I'm doing low sets. So I might do 5 sets of 5 for squat. For deadlift, I might do same thing, 5 sets of 5, and then I might do, some hamstring curls, 5 sets of 5. And that's my 3 for that day. You can pick your own 3 exercises, but just make sure that we're tracking them. On a high month, I might do this. On a high repetition month, I'm doing the same moves. I'm just flipping it. It's much, much lower weight and it's high repetitions. So we're using that low and high concept. And I'm still starting those days with stability work if I'm in a high month. I'm still going through the same kind of program where I do the stability exercises first, and then I come behind and I do the strength exercises, whether it's a low or high month after I've done the stability. So that's Monday. Tuesday is a day that I love to do global stability. So as we're talking about global stability being Tai Chi, yoga, balance training, any of the things that you can choose to pick up global stability and balance, followed by the 10-minute VO2 max on a bike, on a rowing machine, and then some active recovery. And I'm gonna wrap this podcast up with a little bit of information on recovery and how much that can change our performance. But so Tuesdays would be global stability. That's my day. This is almost like an active recovery day with the 10-minute VO2 max program. So I'm getting on that bike. I'm doing the 90 seconds at 50%, followed by a 30-second rest. I'm doing 60 seconds at 75%, followed by a minute rest. Then I get to the real work. I'm doing 30 seconds all out, 90+% perceived exertion, followed by 90-second rest, 30 seconds on, 90-second rest, 30 seconds on, 90-second rest, and I'm done. And that's what Tuesday is going to look like. And Wednesday, we'll go back to strength, stability, strength of the arms and the upper body. And so, going back to the options that we have for arm stability, we can do planks, we can do bear crawls, Turkish get up, single arm kettlebell swing or snatches, getting on all fours and doing, single arm stability with a twist. And then once we've selected the 3 of those that we're doing that day, we'll go through and do the 3 strength activities that we're going to be doing. So for this, a lot of times, again, we don't need to be cute. We're trying to build strength. So we can do bench press. I love dips for a full arm exercise. Pull-ups I love, very, very good. Lots of back strength, lots of stability. Bicep, tricep, another great option. Rows or lat pulls, kind of, if we're not to the point where we're doing pull-ups or chin-ups, then we can add those things in. And we're doing, again, on a low month, we're doing low repetitions and we're doing high weight. On a high month, we're doing low weight, we're doing higher repetitions, and we're continuing to kind of work through those, the 3x3 program where I'm just doing 3 repetition, 3 stability exercises to 3 strength exercises. On Thursday, we're going to go back to a global stability day, and we're going to do that 10-minute VO2 max, and then we're going to do some more recovery after. On Friday, we're going back to strength, and we're doing core strength exercises and neck. Neck, in my mind, is part of the core. The more neck stability and strength you have, the better your upper body is going to function. I see so many people who end up with neck pain and headaches and upper shoulder issues because they have weak neck muscles, and you can really decrease your risk for problems if we train the neck. So we're in the gym on Friday. We're doing any core stuff. I love to add in back rotations in this, like that back twist machine where you're kneeling and you're rotating the body through space. We're doing both sides of those. I like things for core strength like farmer carries, back extensions, planks, ab curls, ab exercises. And for neck training, we use a halo or iron neck. If you've ever seen the iron neck, where you're able to really train your neck in a normal physiological range of motion. We're not adding weight or compression to it. You're training the muscles in something they already do. So it really can be a very, very helpful exercise to add that in to your Friday routine, where we're doing all of the core stuff that you know to do. Work that in on this day, and then we're adding in some neck exercises on Friday. So I think the one thing that people miss on some of these things is trying to balance out some of the core imbalances. If you have a side and you're doing rotations and one side is much weaker than the other, spend some extra time trying to get that stable. We're going to do some videos and some information on stabilizing and balancing that out. But you really do, for the purpose of this podcast, want to pay attention to where those weaknesses are. If you're doing stability exercises and you notice, hey, my left arm is much less stable than my right arm, well, spend a little bit of extra time working on stability of the left arm to try and improve the balance inside your body. So it can be really, really helpful to add those corrections in there if you notice that you've got some imbalances in here. So that gets us to, what day are we on now? So we are on Saturday, and Saturday you have gotten to rest and recovery. So ideally, when we go through this, we have a recovery session on Tuesday, on Thursday, and on Saturday. Recovery needs to accomplish a couple of things. I need to nourish my muscles. I need to get all the healing agents, blood flow, oxygen to the muscles and the tissues that I've stressed. I need to clear out any of the damage that my routine has accumulated. So I need blood flow away from those tissues. I need lymphatic drainage away from those tissues. My recovery also needs to decrease inflammation that has accumulated through the body, so that I'm not, my strength training day hasn't accumulated trauma from continued weeks of doing that. So I'm decreasing inflammation. And it also needs to help to reduce any types of swelling or tissue damage that has happened. And we can do that in a few ways. So sauna can be an amazing recovery tool on these recovery days. When you get in a sauna, we've talked a lot about it. You're heating the body up, you're dilating blood vessels, you're restoring blood and oxygen delivery to a lot of the tissues. You're turning on heat shock proteins, which reduce inflammation. You're activating repair cycles with some of these proteins, so you can repair any little bits of damage that have accumulated. So doing a 20 to 25 minute sauna session can be a really good part of your recovery. I also think that it kind of, activates some like cardio routine, cardiovascular improvements. So it's a very good recovery, and you're kind of getting some exercise for your blood vessels at the same time. PEMF, pulse electromagnetic field therapy, is an amazing recovery tool. It helps to get oxygen to all the tissues, even in areas where blood flow is not very good. So this really helps with repair, with damage, with healing, and it improves our recovery and our blood flow to and from tissues to such an incredible degree. So I'm going to put links to some of that stuff. If you go to the post that comes along with this in the show notes, follow that and you'll see links to some of the videos on PEMF that can be really, really helpful. So PEMF is a very important one. The Race Across America team used PEMF to recover and set the world record for that race as they worked in PEMF into their recovery. Basically, the Race Across America is like America's Tour de France. They ride every day, and they would get off and get on a PEMF mat and recover and get that blood flow. And that allowed them to set the world record for the Race Across America time. So very, very helpful to add that in. Cryotherapy is such an important recovery tool because it checks a lot of those boxes as well. Cryotherapy reduces inflammation in the tissues. It does get a short-term constriction of blood vessels, but when we come out of cryotherapy, you get this beautiful dilation where your body is trying to restore oxygen to all the tissues that it thinks were losing blood flow during that 3-minute cryotherapy session. So it's very, very helpful. Another important aspect of cryotherapy is it decreases collagenase activity, which is the breakdown of collagen. So if we want to restore healthy tissue, we need healthy collagen. So this is a great tool to make sure that all of our connective tissues inside our muscles, inside our ligaments, inside our tendons are getting stronger and reducing our risk for injury as we build this up over time. Another great recovery tool, and this kind of walks the line between recovery and performance enhancement, is something called blood flow modification, or KATSU. On my high months with strength training, we will add something called KATSU. And KATSU is a smart blood pressure cuff that restricts blood flow. You can go back and listen to the episode with Stephen Muñatones on the benefits of KATSU. But basically, if I'm doing high repetitions with blood flow modification, I can get 300% more growth hormone released in the muscles that I'm training and throughout the body, even though I'm doing very high repetitions. So it's really, really helpful for me to improve the hormone response inside the body as I'm going through this training routine. So incredibly helpful. Normatec recovery or lymphatic drainage style recovery can be very, very helpful at reducing soreness, at improving blood flow, at clearing out any of these little kind of damaged mediators that have accumulated from my routine. So on those recovery days, I like to kind of do a layered approach to that. So a perfect recovery day for me would be probably doing cryotherapy followed by a PEMF session and 25 minutes in the sauna. That little 30-minute routine right there will reduce my risk for injury dramatically as I'm going through this kind of progressive type of training. So I'm getting my body ready so that even whenever I'm 90 to 100, I am incredibly fit. I'm incredibly active. I feel amazing. I've got great balance. I've got great muscle strength. I've got a huge cardio pyramid so that I really have a lot of stores that I can pull from. And I've got the motion and mobility in my body to move how it's supposed to move. So to recap that, you're looking at Sunday, we're going to do a 90-minute low and slow. Monday, I'm doing leg strength and stability. Tuesday, I'm doing global stability and balance, and I'm doing my 10-minute VO2 max training. I'm doing recovery after that. On Wednesday, I'm doing stability and strength of the upper body. On Thursday, I'm doing global stability and balance, 10-minute VO2 max training and recovery. Friday, I'm doing core strength and neck strength and stability. And then Saturday, I am doing a recovery day. So if I structure this right, I have a few days where my routine is taking me about 20 to 30 minutes. On our strength days, you can be in and out of a gym in 30 to 60 minutes if you're not taking a lot of time, wasting a lot of time in there to really kind of get in and get your work done. And then depending on what you do on your global stability days, it's certainly possible for you to do some type of global stability for 15 to 20 minutes of like yoga or Tai Chi, and then do a 10-minute VO2 max training, and then get whatever recovery work you can do. If that's a 3.5-minute cryo session, hey, we've gotten a ton of benefits. I've reduced my risk for injury. I've reduced inflammation. I've worked on global stability. I've increased my VO2 max, and I spent 35 minutes working on it. So, you're looking at somewhere in that 30 to 60 minute range for each of these days spending my time on fitness. So basically 6 hours out of my week is spent making sure that I get to be functional and live the life I want to live and stay as healthy as I possibly can for all the rest of that time. This doesn't take time out of your life. This adds time to your life. As you go through this, you feel better. You have more days and time that you are incredibly functional and feel great. This adds experiences to your life. And if anytime I get pushback from people on the amount of time they spend on this, I'm like, if you're spending time doing these things, not only will you be physically healthier, you will be mentally healthier. Exercise is one of the greatest treatments for stress and depression. So, anytime we start talking about these things, people are like, I need to spend time with the family, with the kids. I'm like, these 6 hours will make the rest of the time that you are spending with your family so much better, because you'll be more present, you'll be less stressed, you'll be less reactive, and you're just really creating this healthy future for yourself that we cannot match any other way. And it is so important. Again, if we look at the amount of risk reduction for someone who's in the lowest level of VO2 max versus the highest level of VO2 max, you're talking about a 7-time risk reduction. So 700% less likely to have a cause of death or mortality for the elite category versus the lowest category at all age groups. From a strength standpoint, the lowest strength person versus the highest is looking at about a 5-time risk reduction, a 5x risk reduction from the lowest category to the highest category. So not only are we improving quality of life, we're improving lifespan, we're improving health span, and we're checking all the boxes that would derail us throughout the pathway, if you will. So when we put all of this together, you've really created this, scientific approach to fitness and longevity that will give you all of the benefits that you need, and you're not missing any of the boxes from a physical health standpoint. So I hope that helps. I hope that kind of gives you some insight on what boxes we need to check. If you're missing some of those, start to work those in, even if it's once a week. Start to work in the areas that you're missing. The ones that I see people missing all the time is stability, segmental and global stability. So they're not working on balance. They're not working on stability of the body. And those are the people who are getting strong, but they continue to notice some injuries accumulating. A lot of my older patients are not doing the peak of the pyramid. They're not doing VO2 max or intensity work. And that means that while I have the base of the pyramid, I haven't elevated my VO2 max to where it can be, where I really start to see that risk get reduced for any causes of mortality or problems. And mobility. If you can't move your body properly through space, you're going to have trouble staying healthy. And at some point, there's going to be some problems that start to pop up from the lack of mobility in those areas. So make sure you're checking all the boxes, make sure you're doing the routine, make sure we're building that cardio pyramid, make sure we're building the strength using that 3x3 concept of stability and strength. Make sure you're working every day on mobility. Spend a little bit of time doing it. Wake up in the morning, go out. We're working on mobility each of those days. We're working on stability, doing some global exercises a few times a week, whether that's Tai Chi, whether that's doing some balance specific training, whether that's doing yoga. We have something in there that we are doing that improves the kind of full global stability and balance. And we've made sure that we've checked all of those boxes. So perfect way to wrap this up. If you have any questions, you can find me on Instagram at Derrick B. Hines. You can also find me on Facebook, or you can find me on TikTok at Dr. Derrick. So I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you add a little bit to your wellness routine to get just that little bit healthier today. So have a great day, everybody.